My name is Walt Hargreave. I'm 62 years old, and every morning I wake up with the scent of salt in my lungs. That's not a poetic image, it's the truth. I was born and raised in a coastal town in northern Maine, in a family where the sea wasn't just near, it was part of us. My fishing vessel, the Coral Blue, isn't the biggest in the area, but she knows her job. Steel deck polished to a shine, freezer compartments working like clockwork, and if she could talk, I bet she'd tell a lifetime of stories. My crew, 18 strong. Young, seasoned guys, each of them shaped by storms and salt. Some of them are sons of the men I used to fish with in my younger days. This isn't just a job. It's a legacy. My father was a fisherman. And his father before him. I probably learned to tie a knot before I learned to write my own name. My grandfather, Warren, sailed out in the 30s on a wooden schooner. He used to say, "The sea tests a man. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't show mercy. It just tests." I've seen everything around me change. Boats got faster, tech got smarter, forecasts arrived down to the hour with satellite precision. But some things stay the same, the rhythm of the ocean. Its breath, its unpredictability, its pull. We don't fish close to shore, not with rods at sunset like in the movies. We go far, where the water is dark blue and the horizon disappears in every direction. That's where the real catch is, big schools of cod and haddock. We haul them in, freeze them, and deliver them to processing. It's hard work, sometimes brutal, but honest. And it gives you the feeling that you're living right. I've never known another life. And honestly, I never wanted one. Sure, there are days when my joints ache and I think, maybe it's time for the porch swing and grandkids. But then the sun rises, the sea calls, and I go again. My crew respects me. Not out of fear, but because they know I won't let them down. Everyone who sails with me knows, if there's a storm, I don't sleep. If there's danger, I'm first in. That's not heroism. That's responsibility. I'm not telling you all this for drama. Just so you understand, before I tell you about the day everything almost went wrong. The sea, it's my life. And the people who go into it with me become closer than family. Because at sea, there are no masks. Just the truth. I've seen it take. And not always give back. That's why every voyage is treated like the last. Not because I'm a pessimist, but because the sea allows no other way. But that week started like any other. We were heading out on another trip, gear ready, engine humming, freezers empty and waiting for the catch. Everything seemed routine. Until, in a single moment, it wasn't. That trip began like hundreds before it. We prepared slowly but deliberately, following the time-tested rituals honed over decades. The harbor was still quiet, not yet 6 in the morning, but the Coral Blue was already alive. The scent of salt, fresh diesel, and someone's strong coffee drifted across the deck as the crew came aboard. I did my usual walk around, everything in its place. Life vests, radio, bait, provisions, fuel, all checked, double-checked. The crew was punctual, joking, tossing gear, arguing over who'd cook first. And Ray, our radio guy, handed me the forecast with a grin. "Captain, full week of sunshine," he said. "Smooth sailing. It's gonna be a good haul." I nodded. That kind of forecast is like music to a fisherman's ears, not just comfort, but a promise. When the weather smiles, you feel the sea's approval. And if the fish bite like we hope, we might be home earlier than expected. We left port at sunrise. The water was glass. A thin haze hung on the horizon, the sun climbed slowly, and the world turned golden. Straight ahead lay the open ocean, vast, endless, and welcoming. The day stretched long and gentle. Some of the guys checked the winches and nets, others prepped the kitchen, and I held the helm, watching the sea roll out before us. There's a rhythm to that part of the journey, that stretch between land and labor, where everything falls into place. Each man has a role, and all the pieces work as one. I love those hours, the quiet ones, the honest ones. It's when the boat finds her breath and the crew settles into their skin. We travel nearly the whole day, sunrise to sundown, just to reach our spot. That's where the work begins. By dusk, we dropped anchor in familiar waters. This was a proven site, one we'd visited over years. Reliable. Productive. The kind of place that had filled our freezers before and owed us no favors, yet rarely let us down. No other boats in sight. The radio was quiet. Only the soft hum of engines, the cries of a few gulls, and the endless breathing of the sea. We start at dawn, I told the crew as we watched the sun melt into the ocean. Weather looks perfect. Fish'll be waiting. I can feel it. I'm not a superstitious man, but after a lifetime on the water, you learn to read the signs. The sky, the wind, the birds, the glint on the surface, they whisper if you're listening. That night, after dinner, Rick, our old mechanic, and I sat with mugs of coffee on deck. The ocean stretched quiet before us, and he said, "Just like the old days, Captain?" I nodded. It did feel like them. But somewhere deep in my gut, something shifted. Barely noticeable, but enough to leave a weight in the air. Nothing was wrong. Not yet. We were up before first light. The boat hummed with life well before 5 a.m. Like a heart beating faster in anticipation. Out on the water, the stars were just beginning to fade, and the horizon had the faintest silver edge. The wind was still, the sea flat as a sheet of polished stone. We began fishing right away. The first hauls came in heavy, unusually fast. By 8 a.m. our hold was halfway full. By 10, 3/4. It was one of those rare, glorious mornings when everything went right. If it keeps up like this, I told the crew during a coffee break, we'll fill the freezers and be home early. That got a round of tired but pleased grins. No one minded a short, profitable trip. Jake, just out of high school, was handling the nets like a natural. Old Tom, nearly 70, worked the freezer like he had 30 more years in him. And then, the radio crackled. A burst of static. A voice, strained, urgent, came through on Channel 16, the emergency frequency. Tropical storm warning. Satellite data indicates rapid development. All small vessels advised to leave area immediately. Conditions expected to worsen by nightfall. Repeat, evacuate immediately. We froze. Every one of us. The kind of silence that follows bad news hit the deck like a wave. I scanned the sky. Still clear. Still bright. But suddenly it felt off. The light seemed thicker somehow. The colors, just slightly wrong. The kind of wrong your instincts catch before your eyes do. I knew then, this was no joke. Pack it up, I said. Now. We're leaving. There was no argument, no hesitation. We'd all seen what happens to small boats in big storms. You don't fight the ocean. You respect it. Or you don't come back. The crew scattered, working like clockwork. Nets pulled in, winches locked, deck lashed down, coolers sealed, loose gear stowed. You move quickly, but not carelessly, not when you know what's coming. We turned the bow east, toward home. The sea was still calm, but the tension in the air had changed. It no longer felt peaceful. It felt like a breath held too long. I stood at the helm, hands tight on the wheel. The horizon ahead, smooth and empty. But behind us, the line of sky had begun to shift, darker, heavier, distant clouds rising like slow fire. And I thought, so much for a good catch. By the time we completed our turn eastward, heading for home, the sun was already beginning its descent. Normally, this is the most beautiful hour at sea. The light stretches long across the water, golden and warm, and everything feels calm, even sacred. But not that evening. The sky in the west darkened too early, and the color of the sun felt wrong. Not orange and soft, but dim, copper-like, as if the sea itself had gone quiet to brace for what was coming. The Coral Blue surged forward at full throttle. Our engines roared not from pride but from urgency. The crew was silent now. No more banter, no music from the galley, not even the usual clatter of tools. Everyone knew what it meant to race a storm on a small boat. Some stared out to sea, Others worked silently below deck, securing every last piece of gear. The wind had started picking up. Not sharp yet, but dense, full of warning. Waves no longer rolled softly but stretched with growing weight. The sea was shifting under us. I checked the radar. 120 nautical miles to the harbor. Roughly 12 hours if we didn't hit the wall of the storm early. But it was moving faster than expected, that much was clear. Captain, called Jonathan from the NAV station. News satellite update. The storm line jumped forward. We've lost about 40 miles of buffer. I gritted my teeth. It meant less time. Much less. And then a shout. People overboard. Came a voice from starboard. I rushed outside, heart slamming. The crew was gathered at the railing, pointing. 30, maybe 35 meters out, something bobbed in the waves, a splash of color on the gray-blue sea. We turned slightly, adjusting course to close in. At first, I couldn't believe what I saw. A makeshift catamaran, 2 inflated pontoons tied together with what looked like nylon fabric or a board between them. One of the pontoons was half deflated, dragging sideways in the water. Perched on the remaining float, clinging to each other, were 2 young people, a man and a woman, maybe in their 20s. They looked terrified. Their raft was barely holding together. The wind was tossing them now, waves beginning to slap over the edge. The catamaran swayed, tilted, threatened to flip with each swell. They were hours, maybe minutes, from disaster. We acted instantly. "Throw the life ring! Ready the side ladder!" I shouted. Every second mattered. As the sun slipped lower and the sky turned steel gray behind us, the rescue began. The moment we pulled them alongside, everything else faded, even the storm behind us seemed to hold its breath. The clang of equipment, the spray of waves, the groaning of steel under wind, all became background to this rescue. The young man and woman were drenched, shaking, too weak to speak at first. Their eyes were hollow with fear and exhaustion. We hauled them aboard gently, wrapped them in blankets, and helped them sit. They were shivering, lips pale, muscles limp. The girl looked like she could barely keep her head up. The boy clutched her tightly, as if still afraid she might slip away again. I knelt down in front of them. "How did you end up out here?" I asked softly but firmly. He took a few seconds before answering. We came out on that raft. Just for a few hours. Something romantic, we thought. But one of the floats got punctured, and then the current just pulled us." She whispered, barely audible. "Our backpack fell in. Phones, everything, all soaked. We tried paddling back, but the wind, the sea, it just kept taking us farther and farther." They hadn't eaten. Hadn't slept. They were sunburned, dehydrated, disoriented. It was clear, if we hadn't seen them, they would have died. No doubt. That raft wouldn't last another hour in the storm. And no one would have known they were even out there. We brought them to the galley, gave them food, water, warm tea. They barely spoke, just nodded, grateful, still trembling. Around them, my crew moved like family. One guy secured the remains of the raft on deck, another brought extra jackets. Everyone knew the unspoken truth. This had gone from fishing trip to mission of mercy. I watched them for a long moment. These weren't careless kids. They were in love, starry-eyed, wanting a quiet moment on the sea. And the sea doesn't care about romance. It only gives you what you're ready for, and takes what it pleases. I turned to the crew. "We need to hurry. Storm's gaining." They all nodded. No need to explain. We had more than fish aboard now. We had lives depending on us. We lifted anchor and headed for home, wind snapping harder now, waves thudding against the hull with increasing force. The sky had gone from bruised blue to black velvet, and the air was thick, electric. The real storm hadn't hit yet, but we could feel it chasing us. The sea had turned from a companion into something watchful, rising beneath us like a living thing. I checked the clock and did the math. 10 hours to port if nothing slowed us. But the forecast was shifting by the hour. We bought time, but just barely. Every gust, Every sway of the bow reminded us how little margin we had. The rescued couple sat quietly in the galley, wrapped in dry clothes now, sipping warm tea. Their eyes followed every creak, every shout on deck. They weren't just cold or tired, they were processing something deeper. The kind of near-death clarity that doesn't wear off overnight. I came down from the bridge and sat across from them. "You're safe now," I said. "We'll get you home." The young man looked up slowly. "We still can't believe it," he said. "That you found us, in all that emptiness. That someone was even out there to see us." The girl added, voice trembling. "What if you'd missed us? What if it had already been dark?" I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I didn't have an answer. I only said what I knew. "We don't pass people by. Not ever." Outside, the wind was screaming now. I climbed back up to the helm. My mechanic, old Tom, was already on standby in the engine room. He didn't need orders, he just gave me a thumbs up. Everything was holding. For now. The crew lashed down the final gear, double-checked the winches, closed the hatches tight. We moved like a single unit, not fast but certain. No fear. Only focus. By midnight the ocean had turned mean. Waves slapped the hull with fury, and the boat groaned under each hit. But Coral Blue was built for this. She wasn't new, but she was strong. And she had purpose tonight. We were carrying more than fish. We were carrying redemption. Somewhere before dawn, the sky began to pale just slightly, a silver smudge behind the clouds. And out ahead, the faintest edge of land. We saw home. We weren't safe yet. But we believed we would be. When the first light finally broke through the storm, we all exhaled. It wasn't bright or golden, more of a pale, tired gray, but it meant one thing: land wasn't far. The sea was still angry, still throwing us side to side, but in that dim dawn we saw the coast. It was distant, shrouded in fog, but unmistakable. Coral Blue kept pushing through the chaos, like an old horse that knew its way home. The wind roared. Waves slammed against us, but our heading never faltered. I kept both hands on the wheel and my eyes on that pale line of land. The couple stayed below, safe and strapped in. The crew worked like they'd done it 1,000 times. No shouting, no panic, just quiet determination. We were all running on instinct by then, muscles sore, nerves stretched thin. But we weren't going to stop until we touched shore. The storm was close, too close, but we reached the harbor before it swallowed us. When we finally rounded the breakwater, the wind dropped like a curtain falling. The sea didn't stop raging behind us, but within the protective arms of the port, we were safe. And waiting on the dock was life. Ambulances. Coast Guard. Flashing lights. And 2 sets of parents, pale, trembling, eyes wild with hope and fear. The girl's mother ran toward the gangway as soon as she saw her daughter, almost throwing herself onto the boat. She wept openly, holding her so tightly it looked painful. The boy's father stood beside them, arms crossed over his chest, fighting back tears. I turned away. It was too much. A man approached me. Mid-50s, worn face, salt and pepper hair. He reached out his hand. "Captain Hargreave?" he asked. I nodded. He took a shaky breath. "Thank you. You gave me a second chance to be a father. I don't know how to repay you." I shook his hand. "Just tell your son to take a map next time." He laughed through the tears, and I laughed with him. Not because it was funny, but because it was over. We'd made it. They'd made it. And somehow, everything that mattered was still here. Later, when the crowds had gone and the gear was unloaded, I stood alone on deck. The sky was clearing now. The sea was still, like it had never tried to kill us. We had returned. With more than fish. It's been a few days since we returned. The storm that chased us never truly caught up. Yes, it reached the port, brought wind, rain, torn nets on the pier, fishermen lashing down their boats in a hurry. But that was later. We, aboard the Coral Blue, made it in time. And what we brought back wasn't just fish, it was something living. Something that mattered. I stood on deck again today. Alone. The crew's gone home, some to wives and kids, others to pets or warm beds. The sea has calmed. It breathes steady now. The water reflects the soft morning sun, and the harbor feels like home again, quiet, steady, real. I looked at the mooring lines, the foam along the hull, the drying footprints on the deck. Everything looked normal, but inside, there was that stillness. The kind that makes you stop and just listen. The young couple came back the next day. They brought a huge box of cookies, thermoses of coffee, and a stack of handwritten letters, thank yous from friends and family. I've never been a sentimental man. But I kept those letters. Tucked them into the old fishing chest I've had for 40 years, the one where I store things that still mean something, even after time wears off the shine. The young man came up to me. "Captain," he said, "I hope one day I can do what you did. Save someone." He didn't look like the boy we pulled out of the sea. He looked steady. Changed. "I hope you never have to," I told him. "But if you do, you'll know what to do." They left. Left the coffee, the cookies, and something more, belief. Belief that even in the loneliest stretch of ocean, someone out there will see you. And stop. That night, I thought about how close we were to missing them. How easily we could have passed by. In life, we're always rushing towards something, goals, destinations, checklists. And sometimes someone is out there, not calling out, not screaming, just silent. Still needing help. Sometimes the sea takes. Sometimes it gives back. Maybe that's what this whole thing was for, a reminder. That we are responsible for each other. Not just in the harbor. Not just on land. Everywhere. At sea. In life. Now every time I head out, I glance behind me. I don't just scan the horizon anymore, I listen. Not just for signals or forecasts, but for the ocean itself. Because now I know, it can be quiet, but someone is always waiting. That's the story. Just another fishing trip. Just a week at sea. Just a storm. Just 2 lives saved. And maybe, something more.